From Netflix to Amazon Prime to Spotify, most of us have a subscription or two. They are easy to sign up for. A couple of clicks and you're in. But if you want to ditch the membership, that's a different story. It can be difficult, confusing, and frustrating. The U.S. Department of Justice has filed a lawsuit against Adobe, the maker of Photoshop and other software, alleging that the company makes the cancellation process an obstacle course, one designed to deter subscribers from canceling. Marcus Giesler is a professor of marketing with the Schulich School of Business at York University. Good morning.
Good morning.
What does the lawsuit allege exactly that Adobe is doing wrong?
So Adobe is being sued by the U.S. FTC, the U.S. federal government. They're accusing the software maker of heavy termination fees that are harming consumers. So this isn't just inconvenience, but it's deemed by the FTC as being a harmful practice.
Okay, harmful, but what is it that would make that kind of practice not just frustrating, but illegal?
What would make that practice not just frustrating, but illegal is that the desired outcome that I might have as a consumer is no longer attainable because I find myself in the structural framework that is so misleading and so complicated, almost like a roach motel within I can always sort of check out but never leave. And that is the allegation that the FTC is making.
So how is Adobe responding to the allegations?
Adobe is responding to the allegations by saying that this specific FTC lawsuit and many others in the past, in fact, only drive up prices for consumers, make it less convenient, slow down, the delivery of services, and hurt small businesses. And that's the very common response that we've seen from Adobe, but also other companies that have endured similar lawsuits, such as Amazon in the past.
But they go further and they actually say that they have a very transparent process for cancellation. What do you make of that argument?
I think that is within the eye of the beholder, and it is, of course, Adobe's right to say that. It's objectively less transparent than it could be. It is also comparatively less transparent when you look at industry standards. It is making it much, much more complicated and harder for consumers to terminate a subscription than it would be, for instance, if you look at your Spotify subscription or Apple iCloud subscription. So they are, in fact, making it harder for consumers. And that's at the core of the lawsuit.
I want to get a true sense of just how far a company like Adobe goes to prevent you from canceling your subscription. Talk about some of the tactics that are used to prevent people from leaving.
Sure. Customer experience design is probably a notion that you've heard before. It's all about designing experiences that make, a product or service super captivating and engaging for consumers. That's a set of skills and strategies and tactics that companies use to create a corridor of possibilities, a possibility space, if you will, alongside which we journey as we sort of experience the product and service. And so that same knowledge can be used to create deceptive design techniques, if you will, or, like hurdles within websites or apps that are created for the purpose of manipulating users into taking actions they might not otherwise take, such as making unintended purchases or sharing more personal information than they would be normally comfortable with, or subscribing to a service unknowingly. A very simple example would be the choice that you might have on an app or a website between two different kind of options, either signing up or like continuing down with a particular type of service or terminating the service, and just making those buttons different in size and color so that the continuing the service button will be bigger and more colorful, and the canceling the service button will be tiny and hard to find on the screen. That is already a deceptive tactic. We call those tactics dark patterns. There are deceptive design techniques, and they exist for the purpose of, shaping consumer decision-making in a particular fashion that is beneficial to the company and often not beneficial to the consumer.
So that's in the realm of the design of an app or a program. But what about something even as traditional as cancellation fees?
Cancellation fees are a means to deter consumers from canceling. Especially problematic is the case where cancellation fees are intransparent and often not known until they occur. And we all have always more than one subscription going, we live in a subscription economy, so to speak, right? Where we always have more than one, or most of us have like 2 or 3 or 4 all at the same time. When we know that there are cancellation fees, we're less likely to terminate our subscription. And is that kind of mental calculation that you make as a consumer that companies are betting on, hoping that you might in the end stay with a subscription, so that staying becomes more convenient than terminating.
And leaving. Can you talk about it being a subscription economy? How common is this type of business model for subscriptions?
In this particular category of services, it has been pretty common, and also a subject to a lot of criticism since, I would say, 2012, where, in the software industry, a lot of companies, Adobe took the lead here, shifted from a sort of like a license-based or one-time purchase-based model to a subscription-based model. And there are a lot of benefits to that, arguably, for consumers. I mean, it's convenient, it's easy. We're only paying for what we actually use. So there's convenience and value. It's also beautiful for companies because it generates predictable recurring revenue, unlike the one-time sort of license purchase model, the pay-as-you-go models or freemium models that also existed. So for Adobe, it's an extremely lucrative play, but also one that does not go without criticism. Yes. In the creative industries where Adobe products are extremely important, these subscription-based services have been criticized widely.
Last year, the Federal Trade Commission in the U.S. took Amazon to court, and they alleged that it makes it hard for consumers to terminate their Prime memberships. The agency also proposed what they called new click-to-cancel rules, which would require companies to offer an easy way to stop paying for a product. How effective a solution would that be to this problem?
Well, my advice would be for companies and for regulators to look at the customer experience as a whole and then ask ourselves, what makes it so damn hard and unattractive to cancel, even though consumers would like to cancel, and then look at the hurdles against the bigger picture of the customer experience as a whole. And I think these recommendations are useful, but we need to also think about the context within which consumers often are confronted with these decisions on whether to cancel or not. And it's also important to recognize that consumers are differentially affected by this. Many creatives who use these Adobe products are really dependent upon them. They are not large corporations like the CBC or Loblaw or, that can, afford these subscriptions, but often one-man shows, cultural creatives, or even students. And so, we need to get to an experience landscape, I think, where we make it easier for those groups of consumers, or we could also call them more vulnerable groups of consumers, to terminate a subscription when and however they feel appropriate.
What are you seeing in the Canadian market? Any sign of regulators trying to make canceling subscriptions easier?
Yes. So here in Canada, the FTC equivalent is the Competition Bureau, and that's an independent law enforcement agency that protects and promotes competition for the benefit of all Canadian consumers and businesses. And so they have also begun to look into these subscription-based frameworks and structures in the case of Adobe and also in the case of Amazon. So whenever the FTC pushes out a lawsuit such as that one, the Canadian regulators are listening and beginning to explore legal measures as well. So it's a broader response to Adobe's, let's say, a leadership within the category of subscription and the subscription-based economy. So what happens with this lawsuit will probably have some repercussions for us here in Canada as well.
So while we wait for that decision, a couple of things from you on what consumers can do to protect themselves.
Always read the fine print. It is easy, and we're encouraged as consumers to kind of go down a certain consumer path and journey quickly, because we're obviously interested in signing up. But the signing up process is where there are a lot of complexities and details and kinks that we need to be mindful of. So, looking very carefully at how our behaviors are governed by companies and by the interfaces they use to kind of interact with us is very important. So looking at the fine print, looking at the different buttons. Is it really, are there other ways in which, I can, for instance, terminate an Amazon Prime membership or an Adobe membership? Sometimes, knowing how to call a company, because in the case of certain services, I've heard in a research informant, we're doing research on this at the Schulich School of Business, that apparently Audible subscriptions require you to actually call and get someone on the phone. So having that kind of versatility and resilience as a consumer is important today. Having that knowledge and maybe also a little bit endurance that is required to get to the desired result, to beat the dark patterns, to beat that kind of often, deceiving customer experience design. That would be my advice.
Look at the fine print. Marcus Giesler, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Marcus Giesler is a marketing professor with the Schulich School of Business at York University.